Hello, everyone, and welcome to Our Next Guest Needs No Introduction podcast with Alexandra and Dotsie. Okay, we haven't had an identity crisis. We are still Switch4good. But honestly, Alexandra, it's true. Our next guest needs no introduction.
No, but in case you've been living under a rock, let me introduce him. So today in the studio, we have this amazing doctor and a New York Times bestselling author. His name is Dr. Michael Greger. Yeah, and I am such a fangirl. My mother actually teases me about how much I quote, Dr. Greger said this, Dr. Greger said that. He is a general practitioner, but he's also an internationally recognized public speaker and the author of scientific books and publications, including the New York Times bestselling series, How Not to Die, which is the How Not to Die book and a cookbook along with it. And I just love this book so much. Dr. Greger believes that we can drastically improve our health and reverse life-threatening diseases by harnessing the power of plant-based nutrition instead of popping pills. And he has a new book out called How Not to Diet, which we're going to talk to him about today. He's also the founder of nutritionfacts.org, which I get in my inbox every day, a short video or blog from him that is always full of science-backed information on health and nutrition. So Dr. Greger has so much knowledge to share, so we better get to it, Dotsie, right?
Let's do it.
Welcome, Dr. Greger, to the Switch4good podcast.
Happy to be here. Honored.
So your book, How Not to Diet, will be coming out December 10th. I've already pre-ordered my copy. So is Dotsie. But it deals with the key ingredients of an ideal weight loss diet. So you talk about calorie density, the insulin index, and the impact of foods on our gut microbiome. Can you unpack that for us?
Sure. Oh, and that's just a few bits. In fact, we go through the whole list. This is exciting. I can't wait for this to come out. I wanted to kind of create the optimum weight loss diet from the ground up and come up with a list of criteria, kind of ingredients, if you will, towards the optimum weight loss diet. I came up with 17. And so then any new diet comes down the pike, you can just see how many of the 17 it hits. And see what current diet best fits all 17. So those some of the criteria you added. So, for example, microbiome friendly diets. We have evidence that our microbiome, our good gut flora, play a key role in energy balance. Our good gut bugs not only have to do with gastrointestinal health, but also affect our immune system, also affect even our mental health, and also play a role in energy balance. And they do that by some people have gut flora that actually extract extra calories and put it back into our system. So here we are trying to get rid of these calories, and they come bouncing back thanks to some certain types of bugs. There are also appetite-suppressing compounds like butyrate, these short-chain fatty acids that are produced by our good gut bugs when we feed them. Prebiotics such as fiber and resistant starch found in whole grains and legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. We feed them, they feed us right back, actually have an appetite-suppressing effect. And so, for example, eating beans for dinner, you can decrease the appetite at lunch the next day. So more than 12 hours later, so you have a bean burrito at night, 12 hours later, your gut bugs are eating that same bean burrito, producing these appetite-suppressing compounds, and you actually eat significantly less at the lunch. You just feel full many calories earlier because you ate beans the night before. Really remarkable effects like that. That's why it's important to feed our good gut bugs in terms of helping us achieve optimal weight control.
So speaking of diets, how does the keto diet, because so many people talk about keto, especially those who are not plant-based, seem to be obsessed with keto. And sometimes it's one of the reasons they don't want to go plant-based because they somehow feel that keto and plant-based are very different. Tell us how would the keto diet stack up on your 17 ingredients for a healthy diet?
2 out of 17.
You mean it only has 2 out of 17 of the necessary things for a healthy, life-giving weight maintaining diet?
Well, no. If you want to start going into life-giving and healthy, those are additional criteria.
Oh, you're
These
just talking
17 are just for optimal weight loss, regardless, right?
Oh, just the weight
All right,
17
and
weight
let's-
loss. Okay.
All right, let's talk
you
about
wanna
this.
Start getting safe, nutritionally complete, life extending. Well, then keto goes way off the rails.
Okay. All right. So tell us why, because people go on keto just for the weight loss. They usually don't go for the health giving, although they do say, oh, I feel so good. And usually that's right because they're not eating as much processed food. But tell us why keto is not good for weight loss.
Yeah, so I mean, so what happened? The reason keto diets are so popular, in fact, low carb diets in general, since actually the mid 19th century, is because of the rapid water weight loss. So you step on the scale. The bathroom scale shows, you can lose, 3.5 pounds in a week. And so you get this thrill, you get this positive feedback. But when you actually look at what's going on inside their body, you see that the actually opposite is happening. You actually see a reduction in fat loss. So most of what you're losing is water, but you're also burning protein. Your body cannibalizes your own protein to supply glucose to the brain to keep it functioning when you switch over, transition to a ketogenic diet. So body fat loss actually slows down when you switch to a ketogenic diet, but just looking at the bathroom scale, it seems like a smashing success, and that's what brings people back over and over and over again. But thank God it's unsustainable, because people sticking to it long term would be expected to suffer the consequences. Those eating lower carb diets live significantly shorter lives, significantly increased risk of cardiovascular disease. The goal of dieting is not to fit into a skinnier casket.
Now, keto is high fat, low carb. The protein is incidental, or is that a factor?
Well, it has to be low enough, because your body can actually turn protein into carbohydrates. So it's a low carb and low protein diet. It's just a high fat diet. So maybe 10% carbs, 20% protein, the rest fat. You put people on these kind of diets, and you can see not only an increase in adverse biomarkers like cholesterol, insulin resistance, but you actually see, worsening of, blood flow to the heart, things, critical indices of worsening cardiovascular health.
The Paleo Diet, which is a higher protein, we're eating like our ancestors' diet, right?
Right. So this concept that, shouldn't we kind of eat what we were designed by nature to eat, is certainly intellectually enticing, but what they start in the Paleolithic about 2 million years ago. We and other great apes, we diverged from our last great ape ancestor as hominids back in the Miocene era, more like 20 million years ago. So for the first 18 million years, before we learned how to use tools, which defines the Paleolithic, so the first 90% of our evolution, it's 18 out of 20 years, the first 90% of our evolution, we ate what the rest of our great ape cousins eat, and that is plants. And so our entire physiology, our digestive system, our enzymes, everything evolved in the context of eating plants. And only very recently, in the Paleolithic period, did we, learn how to sharpen spears, and then later on how to refine grains and boil sugarcane. If people really want to eat diets that we were designed to eat, that most closely matches our biology, would be eating what the rest of our great apes eat, a diet almost exclusively of plant foods.
I want to talk about dairy for just a moment. A while back at the theater release of The Game Changers, I met a lady after it was over who was just off the rails, just bubbling over with excitement, because she had been 100% plant-based for about 8 months and had completely reversed her colitis or healed her colitis.
Fantastic.
She was literally in tears. I mean, just so excited for the world to know this information too. And I know, Dr. Greger, you were a consultant since the very beginning, since day one on The Game Changers. And so she's in the process of working to build her gut microbiome back. She had been to multiple doctors. All of them told her it had nothing to do with diet and just kept giving her medication. And she has healed herself with the power of plants. As you know, I think Switch4good focuses a lot on ditching dairy. And most of the doctors that Alexandra and I have had on the show have said that between meat and dairy, not that you have to pick one, but if people needed to take a baby step, that the dairy is more important to give up first. I love your opinion on that. If you agree, if you don't, why?
Yeah, no, I disagree.
Okay.
So, I mean, the data just doesn't support that. The worst animal product would be processed meat, bacon, ham, hot dogs, lunch meat, sausage. Category 1 carcinogen. I mean, it's a known human carcinogen. As I said, the Dietary Guidelines Committee, we try not to smoke around our kids. Why would we send them to school with a bologna sandwich? We are as sure that processed meat causes cancer in human beings than we are that cigarette smoke causes cancer, and asbestos and plutonium. And so known human carcinogen, whereas regular meat, like a burger, is just a probable human carcinogen, probably causes cancer in people. Whereas, so if you look at, for example, the major cohort studies, like the Harvard cohorts, and you do what's called a pro-vegetarian score or plant-based dietary index, where you give people points for more plant foods and give them negative points for animal foods, you can see very clearly those who eat more plant foods, less animal foods across the board live significantly longer, have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, as one would expect, particularly for healthy plant foods, whole plant foods. But if you tease out the animal foods, if there were any animal foods to give up first would be processed meat, and kind of the least harmful animal product would probably be a dairy yogurt, for which very little in the medical literature has associated with disease progression.
Mm-hmm. And then, unless you're 70 or so percent of the population that has an allergy or intolerance to it. I think that's most of the doctors have said that have been gut-related doctors. And so it's dealing with
lactose intolerance, certainly. So most people on this planet cannot digest lactose into adulthood. And so, you can get, this, crampy diarrhea, but in terms of, increasing your risk for the leading killers, I would cut out meat before dairy.
Longevity.
Obviously, ideally, we would replace all those foods with whole, healthy plant foods.
Yes, we would.
I want to ask you about protein. Is there a difference between, is protein, or is there a difference between plant-based protein and animal-based protein?
Oh, critical differences. So it's not just about the quantity of protein. There are different relative ratios of different amino acids in animal versus plant protein, and it comes in a different package. And so, for example, you go to the Harvard School of Public Health, their nutrition page very clearly states that plant protein sources are preferable, and their argument is food is a package deal. Food comes all together. So yes, there's calcium in dairy. Yes, there's iron in beef. Yes, there's protein in pork. But think about all the baggage that comes along with those nutrients. I mean, the food industry loves to talk about nutrients. That's why you can get a box of Fruit Loops that says now with vitamin D, right? Try to give it this kind of health halo where, but instead of focusing on nutrients, you have to focus on, what are the foods we're actually eating? So, as much as Burger King says you can have it your way, you can't be like, I'd like a burger, I'd like the iron in the burger, but hold the saturated fat and the cholesterol and the hormones, et cetera. Same thing with dairy. I'd like the calcium, but, I don't want the saturated butter fat, et cetera. Whereas if you get your calcium from, dark green leafy vegetables, for example, then instead of a baggage, you get the bonus. All of a sudden you get the fiber and the folate and the iron that's not found in dairy and so you get this plethora. So that's why it's important to see what kind of package that comes in. So that's why it's better to get all your macronutrients from plant sources, because you get all those, you get less of the deleterious nutrients of concern, such as sodium and saturated fats, trans fats, dietary cholesterol, and you get more of the good stuff. But even if you extracted the protein out, compared like whey protein to pea protein or something, where there is no package, it's literally just the protein, there's still a different effect on the body. So for example, there are specific amino acids, branched-chain amino acids, as well as methionine, that increase the IGF-1 levels, for example. Your liver pumps out more IGF-1. You eat more of these specific amino acids found predominantly in animal protein. And IGF-1, insulin like growth factor 1, is a cancer-promoting growth hormone, probably why dairy so increases prostate cancer risk. And it's because of the amino acid profile of animal proteins, and that's why for life extension, decreasing cancer, methionine restriction, or switching over to plant-based sources of protein like legumes would be better in terms of decreasing one's risk of these growth hormone-associated cancers.
Okay. I want to touch for a minute on your earlier work, Carbphobia. Where do you think the impetus of this intense carb fear came from? And help us debunk this myth that people should just be so fearful of carbohydrates.
Oh, I mean, it's just, people like to hear good news about the bad habits. So, I mean, if you want to sell books, you want to make money, do you tell people to eat bacon and butter, or you tell people to eat broccoli? I mean, it's really that simple. You want to sell magazines, what are you going to put on your cover? And so that's, I think, one of the reasons, these low-carb diets, the rapid water weight, been called the $33 billion diet gimmick, that you also see with these low-carb diets, because you deplete your glycogen stores and you have to, of course, pee out all those ketones. You lose a lot of rapid weight, but you're actually not losing body fat. And that's really what we care about when it comes to weight loss. And of course, just like any other macronutrients, you can't talk about carbohydrates, you have to talk about foods. So carbohydrates is lentils or lollipops, jelly beans or kidney beans, right? Those are all carbohydrates, but have vastly different effects on the body. And same thing with protein. Where are you going to get protein? Pork rinds are protein, so are kidney beans. Fat could be lard or it could be walnuts. And so you really can't talk about macronutrients in isolation. You have to talk about what foods are healthier, what foods are less healthy. And there are interventional studies. There's studies that actually put this to the test, and you can test, are walnuts healthy or not, period, regardless of their macronutrient makeup.
Right, but people like potatoes, bananas, oats. I mean, not fried potatoes. They do like fried potatoes. I'm one of them, but they like those foods. Why is society so afraid of bananas or oatmeal or, yummy carbs?
Someone wants to sell you low carb junk food, or someone wants to sell you a book about low carb diets. But I mean, if you look at the science, there's actually remarkable consistency going back decades about the core elements of healthy eating. You can go to the twohealthinitiative.org. This is a consensus statement of hundreds of the top nutrition scientists in the world that agree that we should use a plant-predominant diet. This is manufactured controversy. These whole healthy plant foods have been healthy, are healthy, and presumably will continue to be healthy. That is what the overwhelming balance of evidence shows.
And I think they get confused between, they lump like Dr. Greger said, they lump the crackers or the
lollipops,
the cookies with the potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned sugar, Dotsie. So the same thing with fruit. People are afraid of fruit because of the sugar. Can you talk to that, Dr. Greger?
Sure. So we should also be concerned about free sugars, which are sugars that are not encapsulated by cell walls. And so whole food sources of sugar have a completely different effect on our physiology than so-called free sugars or industrial sugars like table sugar, corn syrup, honey, etc. So, for example, I have videos about all this where you give people, 3 tablespoons of table sugar and a cup of water. You get this exaggerated spike in our blood sugars, and we've never been exposed to those we weren't evolved to handle that kind of sugar. And our body overreacts, producing so much insulin. We actually, our blood sugars drop. We actually get a hypoglycemic. Our sugars drop lower than before we even started drinking the sugar. So our body responds thinking, oh my God, we're, in some kind of crisis, release fats into the blood. We get the spike of triglycerides, all sorts of negative effects. What if instead of those 3 tablespoons of sugar, you add a 4th tablespoon of sugar, but this time in berry form with a berry puree, just berries pureed in a blender? adding a tablespoon more of sugar in berry form. So now you're not eating 3 tablespoons of sugar, you're eating 4 tablespoons of sugar. Should it be worse, right? No, it's actually better. You actually don't get as high of a blood sugar spike. You don't get that hypoglycemic dip. You don't get the triglycerides. You say, wait a second, you just added more sugar. But you added sugar in berry form. And it's not just the fiber gelling, that the berry fiber, gelling the food in your stomach and slowing the release of sugars, but there are polyphenols. There are these phytonutrients found in berries and other fruits, actually block the absorption of sugar at the intestinal lining, slowing the rate of sugar going into your system. When we eat these foods in the way they were grown, they have beneficial effects. In fact, there was a study done where they had people eat over 20 servings of fruit a day, which actually has the sugar content, the fructose content of liters of soda. And if you did that with soda, what you'd get is an increase in liver fat, increase in blood pressure, increase in triglycerides. And in fact, what you got was the opposite. 20 servings of fruit a day, actually you only saw beneficial effects, none of the deleterious effects you get from eating sugars in the way the processed food industry would add them to foods.
I love that stat. And the folks at Mastering Diabetes, whom you have cited, in fact, you cited today, and I get your daily videos and vlogs, right, and I read them every day. But they eat a lot of fruit, as we've had them on the show.
As they should.
So when it comes to diabetes, tell us what you recommend, Dr. Greger, for folks who think that it's all about the sugar and they are restricting their fruit.
No, so this has been put to the test. It's not a question anymore. You can actually take diabetics and randomize them to either add fruit to the diet or remove fruit from the diet. Who does better? The diabetics that add fruit to their diet. It's simple as that. Diabetes is a disease of fat toxicity in the context of excessive calories. Mm-hmm. And so where we eat too much saturated fat, and it causes insulin resistance in our liver and our muscles, which increases our blood sugar levels, causes kind of vicious cycle. We can draw that fat out of our muscles by either losing weight or decreasing the amount of fat in our diet, and reverse diabetes, type 2 diabetes, in the majority of cases if we catch it early enough, typically within the first 8 years or so.
Can insulin resistance be created by, well, let me give it an example. I saw a presentation by a plant-based doctor that was, talking about plants for a variety of different issues and diseases that we have today. And someone in the audience stood up who was following the keto diet, and he said, how can you eat a banana? He said, if I eat a half a banana, my insulin spikes so high, right? And my sugar. And she said, I can eat 2.5 bananas and have almost no sugar spike. So we created ourselves, right, by the food that we eat.
So that is insulin resistance. Your body does not respond as it should normally. And so that's why a ketogenic diet can make diabetes worse, because diabetes is a disease of insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. That's what causes prediabetes. That's what causes type 2 diabetes, full-blown type 2 diabetes. And so instead of treating the symptoms, just the sugars, if you don't eat any carbohydrates, you can keep your sugars low, but that's treating the symptoms, not the cause. The cause is insulin resistance, which you can make worse, such that then you have an even worse response to carbohydrates. The only way to reverse diabetes, meaning normal blood sugars on a normal diet, is to dramatic enough weight loss by any means, or even without weight loss, a whole food plant-based diet will do it.
So if you were in an elevator, you're giving a pitch for your book, Dr. Greger, these 17 factors that you need to incorporate into your lifestyle for weight loss, what would you say? What would you say to someone?
That's just the first half of the book. The second half of the book, where I talk about kind of weight loss boosters, all my 21 tweaks, all the things you can do, regardless of what you eat the rest of the time, to accelerate weight loss in terms of the best, meal timing, exercise timing, chronobiology, appetite suppression. There's foods that act as, fat blockers and starch blockers and metabolic boosters and best sleep and stress hormone relief. My elevator pitch for the book would be, it would involve the E word, evidence, actually having an evidence-based weight loss book. What a concept. I don't know, it has 5,000 citations. This is cool. The citations, there's actually going to be one of those codes in the book where you point your phone at it, and you can actually pull up the citations. They actually have links to all the citations. So if you're like, instead of just like flipping to the back of the book, you'd be like, oh, what's citation 4,324? I wonder what the study that's referring to. You can pull it up. We're going to have a special page that you can, with any phone, pull up the source directly, and then you can actually download the PDF and read it through yourself. So that's actually, no other book has ever done that. So that'll just be a nice little bonus. Because again, don't listen to what I say, listen to what the science says, and that'll all be clearly laid out in the book.
What does the science say about calorie restriction and exercise?
So if you ask people the question, what's more important, calories in, calories out, remarkably people, in fact, even doctors, you ask doctors that, they say they're equivalent, or exercise is more important, which is blatantly false. I mean, you just think about it. Like in a minute, you could consume hundreds of calories. I mean, whether you're, biting into a donut or something, hundreds of calories per minute, where it can take, you can only burn, some people may only burn 100 calories per hour doing kind of moderate intensity exercises. So you can see how rapidly, if you actually calculated, how many times you'd have to run up and down the Empire State Building to burn off whatever, calorie-dense meal is coming to you, you realize the imbalance and how we have so much more control over calories in, since most of the calories out for people who are not athletes is actually just our metabolism rather than our exercise. So we actually only have control over a small portion of the pie of calories out, whereas calories in, we have almost total control.
Yeah, and it's more fun to take it in than put it out. I know at my most intense one time I got 825 calories burned in an hour in training, and that's that's not that much, really. I mean, it can, like what he's saying, in comparison to what I can take in.
That,
It took 20 minutes to get 1,000 back in from that. Yeah, so.
You are, by the way, for those who are not watching this show and you might be hearing something in the background, that's Dr. Greger on his tread desk, which I actually have a tread desk too.
She does.
Oh,
yes,
cool.
I do. I love it. And
oh my God, you get addicted. You can't work any other way.
No, exactly. I can't sit that long. And it's not so much for the calories burned, because the calories aren't that burned. It's just to keep moving, and it just keeps your energy up, right? Is that why you do? How many miles?
So the blood doesn't stagnate in your lower limbs. So that's why we think sitting is associated with mortality. Those who sit more than 6 hours a day, even those that exercise regularly, go out to the gym after work, appear to suffer significantly increased all-cause mortality. We think that's because of the endothelial function damage from the stagnating blood flow. You don't have that constant tug of the blood flow in your lower limbs, and that impairs your artery function. And so, look, you don't have to be walking all the time. Even bobbing your knee up and down, bobbing your heel has been shown to prevent that kind of stagnation, prevent the crippling of your artery function that comes from prolonged sitting. So you can take frequent breaks. There's all sorts of kind of fidgety devices or kind of cycling devices you can stick under your desk that are cheap and expensive, won't annoy your coworkers, but it is important not to sit for extended periods every day, independent of physical activity that may shorten your lifespan.
Would you walk us through the Daily Dozen? How did you narrow it down to these foods? And then also for people who maybe are just now hearing about the power of a plant-based diet and are just tuning in, offer us an example day of eating that would incorporate all of these.
Yeah, so How Not to Die, similarly broken up into two halves. The first half of the book is just 15 chapters, and each of 15 leading causes of death, talking about the whole diet. may play in preventing, arresting, or reversing each of our top 15 killers. But I didn't want it to just be kind of a reference book. I wanted it to be a practical guide on making kind of day-to-day grocery store type decisions. So that's what became the second half of the book, where I center my recommendations around a daily dozen checklist of all the foods I encourage people to try to fit in their daily routine. So, for example, berries every day, the healthiest fruits. Greens every day, the healthiest vegetables. Legumes. A tablespoon of ground flax seeds, a quarter teaspoon of turmeric, the best beverages, best sweeteners, how much exercise to get every day. Just trying to kind of inspire people to fit some of the healthy foods into their daily routine. How this came about is, I'd keep finding these amazing findings about particular foods, and I'd be like, wow, I got to eat more of that. But then I just forget and be like, oh, and then I read another, article about the power of, the spice turmeric. So I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Wow. And so I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to do this, get in my daily diet. And so actually the How Not to Die cookbook, we made a whole cookbook centered around these foods. We wanted not just every recipe to be healthy, but every single ingredient of every single recipe to be healthy. No added salt, oil, or sugar. And so we were really excited to do that. So there's a whole cookbook for people who are interested in how one might be able to eat this way. And there's a free app, Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, iPhone and Android, where you can just kind of check it off, track your progress, see how you're doing. Again, it's just kind of an aspirational goal. Sometime when I'm stuck in some airport food court, I may not even check off half the boxes there, but certainly when I'm home and have control over my diet, I certainly try to eat much healthier. And so if you look at some of the checkboxes, so I encourage people, for example, to eat, to get 3 servings of legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils every day. So he's like, 3 a day. If I'm eating 3 meals, wow, I really should be eating beans every meal. So it could be hummus, it could be pea soup, it could be, whatever form you get in. So for breakfast, you can mash some white beans in your oatmeal. You wouldn't even notice the difference. But then, you can check off the box for getting, kind of beans into breakfast. And so there are other things, 3 times. So I encourage people to eat at least 3 fruit a day, so you can so that'd be a perfect dessert. Always looking at a meal and be like, how could I make this healthier? What could I do? So I have a salad in front of us. I can put some canned beans. I can add some nuts. I can add some ground flax seeds. I could add some dried fruit. There's all sorts of ways you can make any meal healthier. Just trying to keep that top of mind, being like, okay, the healthiest foods are, dark green leafy vegetables. How can I add greens to a dish? How can I add beans to the dish? Just trying to kind of ratchet up the nutritional quality at every meal.
And I think that's why Dr. Greger has so much energy, because he eats a very, very, very good diet. Can you give our audience a teaser on maybe 2 other things that are in the first half of the book, which are the vital ingredients for to lose weight, and then maybe a couple of in the second half, which are the boosters?
So let's go through all 17, right? Okay. Anti-inflammatory. Clean, meaning free from industrial pollutants. There's these obesogenic compounds that can increase fat storage. High in fiber-rich foods, that's the criteria. High in water-rich foods, low glycemic load. Low in addictive foods, low in added fat, low in added sugar. Low in caloric density. Low in meat, low in refined grains, low in salt, low insulin index. Microbiome friendly. Rich in fruits and vegetables, rich in legumes, and satiating. So those would be the 17 ingredients. And then my 21 tweaks. These are what we're going to do is we compiled all the chapters on the weight loss accelerators into a list of 21 tweaks to kind of complement the Daily Dozen. So actually the Daily Dozen app there's going to be a kind of a weight loss toggle switch you can go over, and you can add this to your to your list. And so this would include things like 2 teaspoons of vinegar with each meal. You would never want to do vinegar straight. You can actually burn your esophagus, but if you don't like adding it to meals, you can just put it in some tea with lemon juice or something. Incorporating vinegar into our meals, and you say, wait a second, vinegar for breakfast? Well, if that sounds strange to you, well, then you don't know about all the amazing vinegars out there. There's chocolate vinegar and blackberry ginger vinegar and all sorts of sweet and savory vinegars like smoky vinegar, so you can complement really to any meal. So that's one of the tweaks.
chocolate vinegar. I don't know about that.
You don't know dark chocolate vinegar? Oh, that's how I make my cherry chocolate oatmeal this morning. So I took some dark, sweet frozen cherries with some oatmeal made not just steel cut, but before they're steel cut, where they're groats. So full oat groats, oatmeal with frozen black cherries, or you can use water canned tart cherries. And then you add some cocoa, some chocolate vinegar, some fresh mint if you have it, and then flax seeds and some nuts. Warm it up till the cherries melt. And yeah, that's one of my favorite breakfasts. That's what I had this morning for breakfast.
And you've got a bunch of those daily dozens in. So you have, you've
mentioned a bunch, absolutely.
I've got some vinegar research.
So what are some other tips for in this? You said you were going to go through the.
Oh yeah. So then there's more for the tweaks. So I encourage people. Oh, so for example, cayenne pepper. So capsaicin, the spicy part of hot peppers, actually can stop the metabolic slowing that is associated with weight loss. So normally when we cut calories, when we start losing weight, our body tries to slow our metabolism down to prevent weight loss, and we can actually prevent that with sprinkling cayenne pepper. So the studies were done with sprinkling hot pepper powder on meals. If that's too much for you, a similar effect was found with ground ginger. So I encourage people to add a half teaspoon of cayenne pepper every day, however they can get it, or a teaspoon of ground ginger. There are studies with garlic powder, randomizing people, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies of garlic powder, a quarter teaspoon a day. That would cost about a penny a day. Those taking garlic lost significantly more weight than those taking sugar pills. Black cumin, that's something so not regular cumin, some called black cumin. I recommend a quarter teaspoon a day. I believe that's as an appetite suppressant. Talk about how to form healthy habits, preloading, kind of negative calorie preloading. So for example, eating foods that contain less than 100 calories per cup, because eating a cup of food basically decreases your subsequent intake at a meal by about 100 calories. So if you eat something with less than 100 calories, like an apple or something, then you can actually decrease the caloric intake of a meal. So for example, I believe apples, if you eat a large apple before a meal, people tend to eat about 200 calories less. Apple only has about 50 calories. And so basically, how many calories does an apple eat? It could have negative 150 calories if you eat it before a meal, because it cuts down on subsequent intake. And you can do that in a variety of ways. Just drinking 2 cups of water before a meal can have a negative preloading effect, or starting meal with a salad, a low-calorie vegetable salad. Or soup. Another way, you can cut literally hundreds of calories out by starting out with soup. All sorts of juicy ways to accelerate weight loss, while of course eating a healthy diet.
Well, that's chock full of info. Thank you so much for a little sneak peek. I think that's really going to whet our audience's appetite to get your book, How Not to Diet.
No, absolutely. I was starting to take mad notes, and I was like, oh, Dotsie, you can just re-listen to this. Dr. Greger, before you go, all of your fans and followers in the world that's even just starting to learn about you, knows you for sure as a premier plant-based, evidence-based doc. But so many of us don't know you personally. And in your first book, How Not to Die, really one of the chapters and pages that struck me the most was your story about Missy. You were doing rounds in the cancer ward of the hospital. I think it's when you were still doing residency, but you were doing rounds. Would you tell our audience about Missy and that story? And it involves purple nails and nail polish.
Oh God, I can't do the purple nail story. Thankfully, it is 5, and I've got another interview coming up. And so to learn all about purple nails, and it's kind of a purple brown nail action, you'll have to read the book.
Oh,
you're killing me.
Well, Dotsie, she has purple nails right now in honor of Missy and your story.
Oh, how sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on our show, Dr. Greger. We're so
Absolutely,
happy.
so happy to help. Keep up the wonderful work.
Thank you
All right,
very
we
much.
will. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And everyone, we will put which chapter in How Not to Die tells the Missy purple nail story, because you have to read it. It's beautiful.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switch4good.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to Switch for Good. This is the future.